This episode of RetroBlasting is brought to you by Yojo Outlet and Museum Center. They know vintage toys, and when it comes to vintage toys, knowing is the entire battle. Sometimes there are toys from your childhood where you still have every single piece, but it's still not possible to repair them all, and you have to find another solution. And the Cobra STUN is one of the most notorious examples of that.
It's really dangerous, Cobra STUN! Really dangerous to G.I. Joe!
Many of you might recognize this as the Cobra STUN. Now, this was a late entry into the G.I. Joe animated series, and in many ways this vehicle replaced both the Cobra Hiss and the Cobra Stinger. It was sort of a tank and a tactical vehicle all in one. And it was also the harbinger on the Cobra side of going into that fake future that G.I. Joe was doing, the more fantastical kinds of vehicles and characters. This was not very steeped in military design. It was more of a sci-fi concept construct. Now, what made it famous for kids who remember it is that it had the split cannon seats on the front that, sat on the front and then they, split like this. But it also has a notoriously fragile Hasbro accessory. Well, two really. Flags. And these flags are supposed to come up off the top of it almost like this thing is a hot rod. But they were made with very, very thin red plastic. And that red plastic wasn't very durable. It wasn't very robust. And most of them broke off in play. Like, most of them were completely destroyed. By a miracle of miracles, in this Ziploc bag are, I believe, all of the remnants of our original childhood Cobra STUN's flags. I have tried to devise over the years many ways to repair these chunks that are left, these pieces, because I think I have the entire flag for both sides here. Somehow we kept them in the G.I. Joe bin even after they broke. I've thought about melting them back together. I've thought about trying to rig up some kind of new molding system and kind of remelt them into the right configuration. I've really thought of everything. But I don't think there's a way back for these. Having them with the vehicle is great. I still have all that original Hasbro plastic, but I'm going to have to figure out another way to repair these. And really, it boils down to repro replacement. As you know on this channel, reproduction is not a bad word when it's one of the only options left. And in the case of Cobra STUN flags, we need an improvement. We need a better option. We need a durable option. We need something to make this whole again. Now, there's also another issue to address with this stun, and that is the rear cannon blaster, the rear gun, whatever you want to call it. We have the piece. The barrel broke off at some point in its lifetime, but we still have the barrel for it. Somehow, my brother and I managed to keep all those little broken parts in the bin by that point. I wish I'd had the same success record with my Star Wars accessories, but in the case of G.I. Joe, it was a little later in the 80s, and I guess we were getting better about hanging on to even the little broken bits for the most part. So I have to put the barrel back on the blaster and get some flags installed. So let's get started. So my first step in this process is fixing the rear machine gun. Now, the reason I've decided to fix the rear machine gun first is because I have to glue this barrel back on, which is going to be a fiddly little process, as Toy Polloi would say. And I wanted this off the stun before I did it because I didn't want to accidentally get adhesive on the stun body while I was working on it. This is a very easy piece to remove. It has a little peg system right here, as you can see on the bottom of the machine gun housing. It just kind of pegs right into the back, and you can pop it out real easily with a screwdriver. You just want to be careful not to break the tabs on it. But I have to get this barrel back in there. So the way I'm going to do that is, I've never tried this before. My normal go-to would be just a kind of modeling cement or super glue. But I'm going to try this plastic weld compound to see if it will work. It's a plastic solvent cement. I know that Toy Polloi has had a lot of success with it. What you do is you apply it to the part, and then you hold the part together for 15 seconds. Now, when you're doing something like this, you want to test fit the part first to make sure if it's an original broken piece that's going back on, you want to make sure that you're putting it back in the original alignment in which it broke, because that'll be the best fit. It'll have the best adherence, because the cement will be able to evenly distribute and fully distribute across the break, and it'll look correct when it gets put back on. And with a piece as tiny as this little machine gun part, that's going to be a tall order. So I'm going to just look real closely at it and figure out what the right orientation is before I use this stuff. This stuff is a joke. Plastic weld, general purpose solvent. I might as well be brushing water on these parts. This is a frickin' joke. Well, despite the failure of the Plasti-Weld, I went back to an old tried and true method of just modeling cement and being very patient. And I was able to get this piece reattached to the barrel, or I was able to get the barrel reattached to the gun itself. Now, this is not the most robust repair. If I had faith in the durability of this plastic, I would have drilled a small hole into the machine gun housing itself and then inserted the barrel into it and then glued it. But that would be technically inaccurate to how the toy was made proportionally for this part. So we're going to try and live with this repair. If the repair doesn't hold, I'll revisit it one day and fix it the way I just described with a small hand drill. But for now, I think this is going to work out real well. This gun only sticks out the back of the stun, and of course my childhood stun will be in a glass display case where no one's going to be bothering it. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to leave this piece off the stun until the end of the repair of the flags themselves. So let's get on to the next bit. These are the bits of the actual childhood flags that went with this Cobra Stun. We have managed to keep all of them over the last 30 plus years. I don't know how we pulled that off, but my brother and I did. And as you can see, these flags, this one will come out. This one is actually stuck in there. There's no way to repair this kind of stuff. There's just, it's just bits. Now, I'm not going to throw them away because even broken stun flags are rare. I'll keep them with the vehicle. But for the purposes of replacing them, there is a great repro option by warlens.com. Warlens with a D. Lends.com. Now, they had two options for stun flags that they've recreated. They had them straight up and down, or they had them on a curve. Now, the reason I chose the curve is because the originals were actually straight up and down, and that added to their delicacy. It added to the ease of which they would get broken, snapped off. Having them already on a curve that's flexed, I thought would give them extra durability. And on top of that, it means the profile of the stun is lower overall for display on a display shelf. So I felt like this would be the best option. And also, when the stun is moving at speed, these would be curved. So I figure it's going to look better overall. Now, the first thing we have to do is get the bits of flag out of the stun vehicle itself, because the mounting points are on the backs of these cannon pods. So if you see this cannon pod, or this cannon pod, you see this flag mounting point where they broke off. You've got to get in there to pop those out. The problem is that they're actually well inside here to get to them. So how do you accomplish that? Well, when I looked at the stun, I realized you have to get the pods off the vehicle. Well, how do you do that? Because the pods are hinged into the vehicle approximately like this on either side. Or like this. So how do I get those off? Well, the way you do that, from what I discovered, you pop the access panels off of, there are these engine access panels that come with the Stun. And you pop those off, and that way you can gain access to these tabs that are at the bottom. Now, what I mean by the access panels popping off is you don't want them in the way. You want this body to be able to flex just a little bit, even though it's Hasbro plastic. You want it to flex a little bit. So you coax these tabs outward in either direction around the gray body, right? But just enough. You're not trying to pop the body off. You just want it enough so that this separates. This piece right here separates the black from the gray, because this is the hinge point that's holding the pod onto the body. All you want to do, you don't want to risk breaking either side of this body shell. You just want to create enough space so that this pops out. And it'll pop out on both sides because you're lifting both sides up, which lifts both of these up. Once you have that finished, you can then pop open the pod. So I'm going to show you how to pop open. I've done one of them, and I'll show you how to pop open another one here. This pod has a tab lock right here, and it has a tab at the back. So what we're going to do with a flathead screwdriver, a small flathead screwdriver, I'll grab my wider one. It's always better to have the widest possible one you can use, because the smaller your screwdriver, the more pressure you're putting on one single point of plastic on that tab. If you can get a screwdriver that is nearly the width of that tab, it's going to be far more safe to try and pry that tab a little bit. All right, so the way this works is I'm going to coax this back tab off. You're trying to be very careful not to break this tab. There we go. By gently pushing on the back tab with a flat-headed screwdriver, I was able to release this whole setup. Take your gunner seat, move it out of the way. This bottom piece, the sort of bottom tub, you don't need that. What we now have to get to is the underside of this flag mounting point, which is now visible. It's right here. This is where you don't need to be too gentle, because we're not going to be reusing these broken flag posts. Okay? You just use a Phillips head screwdriver, and we're going to pop that out. There we go. This red plastic gets real brittle and kind of flaky over time, and that's why I'm telling you, like, you want to be careful not to damage this part, but you want to push, and break the tab on this to get it out of there. All right, so now that that's out of the way, let's put our pods back together and then put the new flags on. Now remember, you want the right seat to go on the right side. The curved side of the pod is the side that faces the outside of the stun. So that's where the cannon is going to sit. And it sits in this little indentation right here. All right, so now we have that in place. We can put this back on. What you want to do is you want to line up that front tab first. Okay. Check your seams, make sure they're all in the right place, and then Gotta snap down. That freaks me out when I hear that Hasbro plastic snap into place. Alright, that's one pod done. Let's do the other pod real quick. The other cannon seat, or gunner's chair, whatever you want to call it. Alright, that took a little bit of coaxing, but now we have this pod also back in place, nice and tightly snapped together. It's not going anywhere. The next thing we're going to do is get these gunner chairs back on the stun itself. I want to get all of that fiddly work done before we do the simple thing of putting the flags in. Alright, so remember what I said. These tabs on the bottom, we're just going to be popping them out just enough to open up. There we go. That's all you want. You just want them popped out on the side, just to open up these hinges. Okay, that one's in on that side. And now we're going to put this one in here. And then we're going to hopefully bring this down. And test your hinges. Hinges look good. Look at your tabs. Make sure nothing got overstressed or is still hanging somewhere. You don't want tabs to be partially reset. You want them fully reset because otherwise they're under tension for a long time. All right, so we have that finished. And that feels about right for these. They were always, after a while, you know, these pods would always get kind of loosey-goosey anyway, these gunner's chairs. It was part of the poor design of the stun. So let's put our access covers back on. It goes the other way. That's one. That's two. All right, now for our flags. So these are the flags from War Lens. And this should be a clean install. Now you want the Cobra insignias to face outward. So you're going to want this one on this side, and I'm going to put this one on this side. And they should just slot right on in. All right, last but not least, we're going to put our machine gun back on the back. Now the machine gun goes into this hole right here. And again, this plastic can be kind of flaky and brittle, so you don't want to be popping this machine gun in and out a lot. I only did it for this repair. It's the first time it's been out of this stun since 1986-87, whenever this came out. So I'm just going to pop this right back in here, and this stun will be display complete. Being very careful not to touch the barrel. See how those pods just do their own thing? And that's the machine gun back in place. Let's make sure that these flags are really tightly in there. I can't imagine them popping out even if they're not sitting completely flush. Finally, we have our motor Viper, the driver of this vehicle, and my brother kept this vehicle in very good shape. His control sticks are still intact. So we're going to seat our motor Viper in his preferred position in the vehicle. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. A fully restored and display-worthy Cobra STUN. The The Cobra STUN was one of the last major vehicles that we bought as kids for G.I. Joe when we were growing up. Now, I did get a few Tiger Force vehicles along the way right after that, but this really was the last hurrah for us as far as a not repurposed vehicle from Hasbro. And for a long time, it's been sitting kind of sad and, incomplete in essence. Yes, it had the pieces of its machine gun. Yes, it had all the pieces for its flags, but there was no way to repair those flags. And I'm so glad that fans are being so enterprising and taking it upon themselves, rolling up their sleeves and doing the work that, we wished that the toy companies would have done, years ago in testing these accessories, testing these parts to make them a little more durable. But in something like this, with these particular accessories, these particular parts, reproduction really is the solution. And fans are doing the best work. And Warlens has done an amazing job recreating these flags. So I'm really excited to put this back into the G.I. Joe display case now completed. It'll take a place of honor, whereas before it was just taking up its own slot, waiting to be given some TLC. And I'm really excited to finally see it complete once again after almost 30 years. So thanks for watching this, guys, and we'll see you on the next video.